Greetings. I'm Dan Larson, and you're listening to Quiet Echo, the podcast, where we sit on the front porch together and make sense of a noisy world. It's Friday night here in Cedar Valley. Temperature's dropping, there's a fire going in the wood stove, and Rebecca left me a plate of her oatmeal cookies before she headed over to the Hendersons. Their furnace went out again. Third time this winter. But that's Rebecca. She hears about a problem, and she's already halfway out the door with food in her hands. 42 years of marriage, and I still haven't figured out how she moves that fast. I mention that because it connects to what I want to talk about tonight. If you've been watching the news, and I know some of you try not to, and I understand why, you've seen what's happening out in Washington state. The Pacific Northwest is underwater. Rivers that have been running through those valleys for thousands of years have risen to levels nobody alive has ever seen. The Skagit, the Snohomish, the Skykomish. Names that sound like poetry until you see them swallowing roads and farmland and people's homes. Governor Ferguson declared a statewide emergency. As of this morning, somewhere around 100,000 people have been told to leave to grab what they can carry and get to higher ground. And the thing about floods is, they don't care who you voted for. They don't care what you believe or where you go to church or whether you go at all. Water just rises. And you either move or you don't. Now, I could talk about climate policy. I could talk about infrastructure, levees, and FEMA response times. Those are real conversations, and they matter. But that's not what caught my attention this week. What caught my attention was a photograph. It showed two people, a man named Chad Walker and a woman named Adrienne Higbee, helping a neighbor secure their property as the river roared past. The caption said the neighbor was from out of town, meaning not someone they knew, not family. Not even, technically, a local, just someone who needed help. And there they were, helping. There's a verse in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 that says, "Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." I've read that verse 100 times, probably more. But sometimes you read something so often it becomes wallpaper. You stop seeing it. And then something happens, a photograph, a news story, a moment, and suddenly the words come alive again. Bear one another's burdens. Not bear the burdens of people you agree with. Not bear the burdens of people who can pay you back. Not bear the burdens of people who deserve it. Just bear one another's burdens. I think about what that looks like in practice. In Washington this week, it looked like National Guard soldiers filling sandbags at 4 in the morning. It looked like sheriff's deputies in Pierce County wading through waist-deep water to pull people out of an RV park, including one fellow wearing a Santa hat, which, God bless him, tells you something about the human spirit right there. It looked like California, sending rescue teams north, because when your neighbor's house is flooding, you don't stop to check whether you agree on water rights policy. You just show up. You know what phrase keeps appearing in all these news reports? Seek higher ground. Officials are telling people to seek higher ground. Get up. Get above the water. Find safety. And I couldn't help but hear the echo in that. The spiritual echo. Because isn't that what we're all being called to do? Not just when rivers flood, but every day. Seek higher ground. Rise above the pettiness. Rise above the grievances. Rise above the comfortable excuses we make for not helping, not showing up, not being the person we know we're supposed to be. There's a story in Matthew chapter 7 about two builders. One builds his house on sand. One builds his house on rock. And when the rains come, and the floods rise, and the winds blow, only one house stands. We tend to read that parable as being about personal faith, and it is. Build your life on something solid, on Christ, on truth, on principle, and you'll weather the storms. Build it on sand, on trends, on comfort, on whatever feels good in the moment, and you won't. But I think there's another layer to it. I think it's also about community, about what we build together. When the waters rise in Washington, the people who survive aren't just the ones with the strongest houses. They're the ones with the strongest neighbors. The ones who built relationships. The ones who showed up for each other before the emergency, so that when the emergency came, they already knew how to work together. That's the rock. That's the foundation. Not just individual faith, but shared commitment. The unspoken agreement that says, I've got your back and you've got mine. Here in Cedar Valley, we understand this. We've had our own hard winters. Our own moments when the only thing standing between a family and disaster was a neighbor with a truck and a willingness to help. I think about old Frank Mercer, who passed a few years back now. Every ice storm, without fail, Frank would be out before dawn with his tractor, clearing driveways for folks who couldn't do it themselves. Nobody asked him to. Nobody paid him. He just did it. Because that's what you do. And when Frank got sick toward the end, people showed up for him the same way. Meals appeared on his porch. Firewood stacked itself by his door. His driveway stayed clear, even though he wasn't the one clearing it anymore. That's the economy of grace. You give what you can, when you can. And somehow, when you need it, it comes back around. I don't want to romanticize this. I know it doesn't always work that way. I know there are people who fall through the cracks. I know there are communities where the bonds have frayed, where people don't know their neighbors, where the instinct to help has been worn down by suspicion, exhaustion, or just the grinding pace of modern life. But I also know this, that instinct is still there. It's in our bones. When the water rises, something in us remembers what we owe each other. Not because we're commanded to. Not because there's a program for it. But because we were made for it. We were made for each other. Governor Ferguson said something that stuck with me. He said, the next 48 hours are critical. He was talking about the flood, about river crests, levee integrity, and evacuation timelines. But I heard it differently. The next 48 hours are always critical. The next conversation with your spouse. The next interaction with your kids. The next chance to help someone who's struggling, or to look the other way. We don't get to choose when the floods come. But we do get to choose what kind of people we are when they arrive. We get to choose whether we're the ones filling sandbags or the ones pretending we didn't see the water rising. Here's what I want to leave you with tonight. Somewhere in Washington right now, families are sleeping in shelters. Kids are wondering when they can go home. People are standing on hilltops watching everything they've built disappear under brown water. And somewhere else in Washington, right now, strangers are helping strangers. Hands are reaching out. Doors are opening. The ancient, sacred work of neighboring is happening, the way it's always happened when the situation demands it. Say a prayer for those folks tonight, if you're the praying kind. And if you're not, send them a good thought. It matters more than we know. And then ask yourself this, when the waters rise in your own life, whatever form that takes, who's standing beside you? And who are you standing beside? Seek higher ground. And bring someone with you. That's all for tonight. I'm Dan Larson, and this has been Quiet Echo. Before I let you go, this podcast is brought to you by Publication Consultants. They believe in the power of authors. If you've got a story to tell, a book you've been meaning to write, they can help you get it out into the world. Visit them online and tell them Cedar Valley sent you. Thanks for sitting on the porch with me tonight. Rebecca's home now. I can see the headlights coming up the drive, so I'd better help her with whatever she's bringing back from the Hendersons. Knowing Rebecca, she probably came home with more than she left with. Casserole dish. Jar of something pickled. That's how it works around here. Take care of each other. We'll talk again soon.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open.